What up, Willy? How you doing, man?
Hey Peter, good to be back. Lucky we
Good to
can
be
do
back.
this. There's a power outage here, and the internet was very flaky earlier today, so
Okay.
hopefully we're good now.
Is that an energy crisis power outage?
Well, I live in a tiny little village, and I think the second time this year it was a scheduled outage. I don't know what they're doing. We had a typhoon here not long ago, so maybe they were doing some maintenance. Yeah, so that's that.
Well, I've had fire alarms all night and barely slept, so everything's collapsing. Everything's falling apart.
Yep.
Hey, we had an all-time high.
We did, didn't we?
We
67.
did.
Almost
67, man.
67.
Did
So
you see that
yeah.
coming?
Yeah, I said where it was like it was overbought from fundamentals, but like the momentum was strong, and I thought we'd break it. I said would was bullish. We went all time highs, and did come back, which was what was expected. I didn't think it would come back and smash through the below 60. So that was a surprise, but it definitely was. It's so overbought right now. It's crazy. But having said that, we know why the price rallied. The ETF, and it's an interesting one because the ETF is, people are now we've got now these long-term investors that are now buying futures instruments through the ETF. So that's kind of thrown everything out of whack. Like you can typically futures is a trading instrument, and now it's also a long-term investment instrument. So it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of find the new balance with how it sits from on-chain. Normally, you see it on-chain, they're buying, they're moving it off to cold storage, and you can guarantee that that's more of a longer-term investment. Now you've got like a lot of derivatives being bought by ETFs holders. So yeah, but using the old balance, like the price shouldn't be anywhere near the 60s. It should be in the mid 50s or even lower. But yeah, it's hard to tell right now because the ETFs has changed the balance of the whole ecosystem, and we'll wait and see. But I do think it was overbought. Now it's sort of consolidating, so it's good. I'm not in any kind of concern that the thing's gonna break down here. Like there's decent buying support, fundamental buying support. So just biding our time, really.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that because you were surprised it dropped down to below 60, but you also were surprised we went up to that
No, I
high
thought we'd
because you.
go up. I thought we might
Oh,
even go as high as 70. I thought like momentum's strong. We'll break all-time highs. We'll go up, probably test a fib. But went as high as 67. It exhausted, and then it came back down. I thought it would kind of come back down. I actually thought it would go maybe as high as 70 and then come back and test like 63, that sort of region where was a resistance, and then sort of bounce its way back up. But it smashed through and went down into the 58s, and I think part of that was everyone started leveraging up. So the leverage traders started to pile in and go DGN long, and whenever you see that, it's just disaster because too much money on the table to take them out. And so we're going to go through this, same old purge the leverage. And, like if you looked at the funding rates, the degen traders, the noobs, they tend to be trading on Bybit, and Bybit was like ridiculously long in terms of their funding rate. And the pros which trade on FTX and Deribit, they were very like muted and even negative. Like on FTX, it even got into shorting. So whenever you see that happens, it's pretty obvious what is most likely going to happen, which is the noobs are going to get wrecked by the pros. So it's just there's a bunch of things. There's room for downside. There was definitely a lot of room for downside, and then the people belonging were very much punished. Open value, open interest, like the amount of like derivative contracts in play is still very, very high. So you kind of expect a bit of volatility right now. But yeah, overall, I think it's macro super bullish, right? It's really bullish macro. It's just these small, within a week or two kind of gains. Play the games that the people play are sort of whipsawing a bit around, but yeah, the picture is absolutely beautiful. Panning out to next year, it's like I have no doubt that we're going to break 100,000 in the next run. There's so much like coins scooped up off the market by long-term holders that have held for more than 5 months, and so it's really setting up really nicely for another bull run. I'm not sure how long that's going to go, but like definitely multiple months from now. First quarter looks really good. May run into second quarter. I'm not sure.
Well, I was with somebody yesterday. I'm not going to name them, but somebody we both know, and they said they're a cycle maximalist. I said, "What do you mean?" They're like, "I believe the cycle pretty much plays out the same every 4 years." He says. I said, "What do you mean by that?"
Yeah.
He
Well, that
said
deadline's kind of Christmas, isn't it?
the deadline's January, I think.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll wait and see. Very little chance from the fundamental setup right now.
Well, listen to what he said. He
yeah.
said he thinks that Bitcoin is going to challenge gold. It's going to challenge gold market cap. I was like, that's a 10x from here. He's like, yeah, well, it's a 9x, I think. I was like, you think it could go up to 500,000 by January? He said, yeah, but I think it will. And then I think we'll get another 70-80% retrace. I was like, huh. Well, I'm talking to Willy tomorrow. I'm going to ask him because I don't see that.
Is this one of these guys with the name Parabolic in their name?
Nope. I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you offline after the call.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, I mean, the first part I think is quite correct, is that we are challenging gold and Bitcoin, because gold's financial cap is 40% of its total cap. What is gold right now? Is it 12 trillion?
I think it's 10 trillion.
10, 12, yeah. It's had a bad year. So that's only $4 trillion. Bitcoin's comfortably above 1 trillion, right? So it's only a 4x from here to essentially challenge gold as a financial instrument. Like all the gold stored in bank vaults to hedge inflation, war, that sort of stuff is only $4 trillion worth of asset base.
No, I think he meant the market cap, the 10 trillion market cap.
The total, the jewelry and the industrial, all that sort of stuff. Okay, yeah, that's I mean, that's got to go. It's got to go apeshit. But I don't know. Anything can happen. I think a lot's got to do with fiat, how whether or not inflation, kicks in hard, like Jack Dorsey is a fervent believer of. So we'll see. A lot of this stuff is just guessing. I think. Absolute price targets is guessing.
Well, I know that, but one of the things I am super interested in is, do we do the same as January, or do we somehow break out of this? I did quote something from one of your reports this month. You said, we are now in a different world where past activity does not reflect the present, which I thought was super interesting. But like, are we going to break the cycle? Because part of me is like, maybe I should sell 10-20% into January, because something will probably go into a bear market. But if I was wrong, I'd be obviously disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, even with let's talk about the ETF, right? We've got now. Is it 2 ETFs? Valkyrie as well as the what was it? Was it ProShares or something?
ProShares and Valkyrie.
ProShares.
Was there another one? Bitso?
Yeah, there's. I think isn't that Bitto? Is that the code? For
might be
the ProShares.
Might be.
Yeah, there's a number of them, and billions. Was it 1 or 2 billion was bought on the opening week? And if you were to say, okay, so $1 billion, let's call it a nice round $1 billion was bought on, the ProShares. Had that been a spot ETF or Bitcoin itself, $1 billion Bitcoin would have got bought.
I know,
but in this case, $1 billion of futures contracts got bought. So no Bitcoin got held, but what happens is the price of the futures skyrocket in relative to the spot price, and then some very sophisticated hedge fund type traders are going to come in and they're going to run a cash and carry trade. They're going to buy the Bitcoin and then they're going to sell the futures and they're going to arbitrage the difference, because these quarterly futures often trade 20% above 10-20% above the spot. And then when that contract expires, they'll close at the spot price. So I buy spot, maybe at $60,000, and I sell the futures contract, which is maybe trading at $72,000. And then I know that I've made $12,000 of profit, because eventually when that expires in like 3-6 months time, 9 months, they'll be the same, right? And so that ends up being typically in Bitcoin, the cash and carry trade 20-25 is sometimes 30% of yield that these guys get. It's very it's called risk neutral. There's no risk in it, and so now there's $1 billion was bought on a futures ETF, and no Bitcoin was actually bought. It was just contracts, and then these hedge funds effectively buy the Bitcoin, short it, and they're holding it in proxy for, you could see it as they're holding it on behalf of the futures ETF, and they're incentivized through this cash and carry trade, this nice fat premium. And that fat premium just got fatter because the demand on futures, and that's like 20-30% premium. So another way you could look at this is the futures ETF, $1 billion was bought, only 700 million found its way to spot investment. 300 million got its way into the kind of the profit margin of hedge funds. And so you could have said that's like someone buying $1 billion and then someone else selling 300 million, like in a mining fee that's dumped back onto the market. So that in itself says, with a futures ETF, there's large demand. You've got a sell pressure coming from futures incentivized fees in that whole food chain. That's significant. That's starting to will rival the sell pressure of miners. So I am really thinking this whole mining cycle, 4-year cycle, is very much coming to an end, because we've got very sophisticated instruments, ETFs, futures, derivatives. Even the Grayscale is 4% of the mining network that they deduct out of their stockpile of 650,000 Bitcoins, and then sell into fiat for their fat, paycheck. So that ETF alone, Mr. Barry Silbert and his Grayscale ETF, he is selling down as much as 4% of the mining network. And the mining network, they don't actually sell all their coins, right? Mm. So that gives you a perspective of the kind of dynamics at play right now. So everything's different now. It's very different.
Help me understand, Willy. When you say about this cash and carry trade, they buy the future and then they buy the spot, and they essentially
sell the future by the spot.
Sell the future by the spot. Who are they selling the future to?
The guy that's going long. The guy that's going long Bitcoin. If I think that Bitcoin's going to 100,000 by December 31st, and that contract is currently trading at whatever, 70-something thousand, well, I know that I'm going to sell at 100,000 in December. So I'm willing to buy that futures contract. And that's effectively the premium I pay is the cost of the other person selling you that contract. You're buying, it's basically funding, It's like if I wanted to buy Bitcoin that I can't afford to buy and I'm borrowing from the bank, you have to pay the bank interest. So you could do that via borrowing. That's called margin leverage. You can you can borrow money from the exchange and leverage. And that's what we traditionally had with, the early leverage we had with Kraken, Poloniex did that kind of margin. And then when BitMEX came out, they introduced futures. And futures is a different contract where the funding rate in the calendar futures, at least, is built into the contract. And then there's a time value in the contract. And as it gets closer to expiry, it starts to taper down and down and down. That premium comes down. And that's really another view into the funding. You can just consider it funding.
So because these people are sat on large amounts of cash, they can sell the futures to you and buy the spot, and then that's a really easy trade.
No, they've bought the Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes up,
and they sell you
and
the
they're
future.
shorting it, they're shorting it. They're like nothing happens. Like the Bitcoin price moons, and you're shorting it. Well, your Bitcoin on the other side is mooning with it. So you're netting out at zero plus the decay in that contract. That contract value is starting to drop and drop and drop, and that's your yield. Remember, like I'm buying it's $60,000 today. I'm buying $60,000 worth of Bitcoin, one Bitcoin, and I'm shorting one contract at 70,000. And so, like, I'm being paid because I'm selling it. I've sold this contract, so I've been paid $70,000 right now. I'm buying Bitcoin for 60,000. I've just pocketed $10,000.
Yeah.
And I know that they will, like, that contract will be worth whatever the price of the Bitcoin I'm holding is when it expires. So I know if I'm going to sit on this, by the end of that expiry, I've creamed the carry. I've creamed that premium, which is the $10,000. The only thing I have to do.
It's a total risk-free trade.
It's a risk-free trade if you consider fiat your your golden light, and I value fiat, and I want some yield on fiat, US dollars. But if you're valuing Bitcoins, then you're losing against Bitcoin, and your wealth in Bitcoin terms is dropping. So traditionally, hedge funds from the traditional world will do the cash and carry trade because they're all about getting 20%. That sounds sweet when I can only get 1 or 2% in bonds. So that in their view, that's great. As Bitcoin, as we go, well, that's kind of shitty. And I mean, myself, I always have a partition in cash because cash just provides that nice buffer of liquidity. If Bitcoin's very volatile and we get a real crash, there's some cash to buy the dip. And I don't want to sit that cash in a bank. So maybe I'll do some cash and carry and get 20, 30, 40% to mitigate the money printing that's happening with the Fed. And so by doing this, the money goes back into crypto, you get the yield, and it's roughly enough to offset the Fed's money printing. So you're not subject to dilution, and you've got a little bit of safety buffer. So I can even see a lot of crypto people doing these kinds of trades to get yield on their US dollars. And a lot of people doing this on DeFi, which I haven't really looked too deeply into, but there's definitely a lot of yield to be done in there as well.
Okay, wow. So let's go back to the cycle changing and the data changing, because I think that's a super interesting point. We have been subject to these 4-year cycles where everything kind of does play out the same, and like maybe this year looks like 2013 and 2017 looks like whatever. But like we have been subject to these cycles and this kind of these volatile moves. The data you're saying is starting to change. What specifically are you seeing this change? What is it that's making you go, okay, I think we could, stretch out into Q2 for the bull market?
Yeah, I mean, like this started a long time ago. I think we talked about this a year it was like over a year ago, I think we had this conversation. And, the realization, having talking to one of the large OTC brokers, saying that the exchanges are selling more Bitcoins than miners. And that was like, whoa, suddenly we've got a new supply side that is not acknowledged by the market, and seeing how big that is. And then so there's one overlay of demand and supply from all the participants in the ecosystem that used to be just miners selling and everyone buying. And then it became spot exchanges also adding to it. But you don't really trade a lot in spot. And then suddenly derivatives came into it, and the volumes they do are like, a 5x or a 10x higher. And so suddenly the exchanges had more sell pressure. Then Grayscale came out and like their 2% fee added way big sell pressure. And then now you got futures ETFs and it just keeps going on. And then you've got the introduction of mining becoming corporate publicly listed companies who now don't sell their coins and they're now hodling and using equity to fund their operations because people who buy mining is wanting to get exposure to the coins that they're mining and hodling. And so even now there's a transition from the sell side from miners beginning weaker because they're becoming large entities that have been traded on equity markets. So you've got a whole big bunch of fundamental changes. And then when you look at then you on the demand side, which is the buying demand from hodlers, we can look at on-chain to see what that looks like. And so, and that's looking really, really, bullish. And I didn't know what would happen at the end of this year. I think I said this many times is like, I don't know what's going to happen. When is the top? What is the price? I said, I don't know when the top's going to be. A lot of what the price will be is when the top is going to happen. But I could tell you third to fourth quarter. And third to fourth quarter, end of third quarter, we could start to see that coming out of the 30,000 zone, we had this huge amount of new accumulation that registered by long-term holders, which is a Glassnode metric. It's like you look at how long coins have been held in a wallet, and it turns out that after 5 months, 155 days, the probability of that coin moving starts to plummet at a faster rate. It's like a sea change. So you can go probability of this coin moving into this wallet and then it moving off somewhere else, like being sold, is usually very high for the next day and next day. And so it starts to decay. The longer a coin has not moved, the more chance that it's not going to move tomorrow. And then at 5 months, there's a sea change. And so, when we look at that, and you define the long-term holders, the guys that aren't going to sell anything that's held by 5 months or more, they're long-term holders. You run a ratio with the people that may sell, which is under 5 months, and you get these really nice oscillations, really nice charts that show every time we be preceding a bullish run, this ratio of long-term holders holding the supply, dominating. And then it's always, once they've had their fill of being at peak levels of holding the supply, the price rallies. And as it rallies, then they start to sell down. And effectively what happened was the rally at the start of this year up to $64,000 brought in the previous guys that were long-term holders sold out. And we brought in a whole bunch of new guys that bought that rally, and they are now aging to 5 months, and they are our long-term holders now, and so they're kind of waiting for the price to rally into the six figures, and then you'll see them start to sell, and as they sell, this sort of metric starts to drop down. The long-term holders give up their coins. The next wave of new guys coming in. So that cycle, so you can see this demand supply cycle, people scooping up coins, they get their run, they sell into the next rally, the next cycle people buy into that rally, and then they become the next long-term holders, and then they sell in the next rally. And so that cycle's repeated for, a good part of a decade. You've seen many of these cycles, and we've just reloaded. The shotgun is just reloaded with new ammo, and these guys are at peak, and we're ready for another run. And it's a very reliable indicator. So no matter what happens around this choppy next few weeks, we know with very high certainty that we're going to get a good rally off the tail end of this year. Fourth quarter is going to be great, and generally with the time signatures of these things, it's going to run into first quarter, and we'll just have to see how it runs into the second quarter of next year. Maybe it goes even deeper. But it's still really early. They've just reached peak levels, and they're now consolidating at that upper ceiling, those long-term holders. So, I have no qualms at saying that this is what I think is going to happen, and I don't think it's a risky call. I think it's pretty set in stone, looking on chain.
It's funny though. It's if like the narrative of the halving, there's the halving priced in, was based on the supply changing, but if miners are holding on to their coins, it's kind of a narrative and a self-fulfilling prophecy rather than actually something based on the supply changing every day anyway. So it feels like it's it's almost like a fast playing market cycle that's just based on everyone expecting it to happen rather than based on the fundamentals of
Well, we can
the
see if
miners selling.
the miner's selling. We can see
Yeah.
how much the miner's selling on every hour, really, on the Glassnode charts, right? You can actually see the coins leaving the miners' wallets. So we can measure that. But like, I'm actually talking about the theoretical maximum, even if they kept selling everything. This is what we would get. It's not that significant if they were to sell all their coins
Yeah.
consistently, because they are now outgunned by the other sellers, the ETF guys and the derivative exchange guys.
The guy I was with yesterday said these cycles are a psychological attack on Bitcoiners because you can be you can get through a cycle and be more profitable than you were at this point, but you have still have come down from a very high point. You could like shoot up to be worth millions and millions and then come down, and like in your head you should be happy, but it's a psychological attack because trying to sell the top so hard.
Yeah, this is like human psychology, is that
Yeah.
if you give someone $1 million and then you go, oh, I made a mistake. I was only meant to give you $500,000, and you take $500,000 back. They're really sad,
Yeah.
even though they started with nothing. They got given $500,000, but because they reached that peak, they're sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree totally. It's a funny quirk of the human mind. We are much more wired to be sensitive to loss than the few euphoria of gain. So
Did you see that Shibu trade?
I haven't looked at their chart, but like it's all over Twitter, right? I don't know how
$8,000.
much.
Somebody bought $8,000 worth 400 days ago, and it's now worth $5.7 billion.
Billion? Seriously?
Billion? Yeah, billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they hold
It's
it? Did they hold it?
Yeah, the wallet's still available. I'm always wondering if they've like that
Is it a
person not just
developer?
sold any.
Is it a
No
developer?
idea, dude.
Oh well, yeah, a multi-billionaire got minted. Doesn't that make them? Does that go onto the Forbes rich list?
Probably. It's probably the
It's like-
greatest trade of all time.
It's like that's great. It's like the rich list, SpaceX, Tesla, this kind of mogul, that kind of mogul, and then we've got a sheep mogul.
And nibs.
It's fun making a mockery of the rich list, really. But I think
It really
crypto's
is.
starting to make a mockery of a lot of the traditional world.
We're making a mockery of money, of what's actually happening right now. I wonder.
Yeah.
I doubt there's the liquidity for them to exit at 5.7 billion, but
Yeah, I would agree with that. You'd have to exit very, very slowly and hope that Yep, exactly. That's one of the things you learnt in 2017 with a lot of these shitcoins, is that when you need to exit, you probably can't, and like all the numbers you put on your like portfolio and go, I own X million dollars, and it's like, no, you don't, because if you sold, that token would go half, and that's just you, let alone everyone else that's going to pile into selling when they see you selling. So yeah,
I think
that's yeah.
I think I would absolutely sell my ethical, sell my moral background to trade $8,000 to 5.7 billion, and take all the shit that comes with that. I think I would do it.
I don't know. It's like I don't know if there's like I think trading's amoral, mainly amoral. I think there's immoral things in trading, but like you're buying, you're selling. All right. There's no morality in it. I don't think there's morality. You can't buy that token. Why not? You're just trading it. You're not like it's not it's not like you're investing in it and then you're trying to shill this token to as many people in your friends and family as possible so you can get richer. That's a morality issue. I think the
Yeah.
hodling shilling is a morality issue. If you're trading, you're buying one day, you're selling, you don't give a shit. It's amoral. You're not attached to the coin.
Dude,
So I
my
think
my
that's a
s-
difference.
my sister bought Shibu, right? She messaged me. I was like,
Uh-huh.
Lorraine, have I not taught you anything? Just buy Bitcoin slowly, whatever. I'm actually scared to ask her how well she's done now. I'm afraid she's
She's
going
gonna
to turn
buy
around.
you out.
Yeah,
She's gonna buy you out and change this to what Ship did.
What Shibu
Shibu
did.
this way.
Imagine that. Imagine that on one trade, she's like beaten me on 5 years of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that would be hilarious, right?
That would be hilarious. I don't know if she
But
can
I
hold
think
it.
that's good. That's good to humble the Maxi tribe. I think humility goes a long way. I think I don't know, the Maxi camp's getting a little bit I don't know, toxic and a bit full of it. I think, and yeah. So
Well, I did an interview yesterday with this person I told you about. Well, it's going to be obvious now because I've said I did an interview with them, but it's all about toxic maximalism, and they did the research back into the history of Bitcoin. There's a really interesting point he made. He said, things are going to get a bit crazy over the next decades, and there is going to be a transition of money and power as Bitcoin continues to grow and sovereign currencies continue to collapse, and there's going to be winners and losers in that. And he said, I feel like we're going to owe the losers an explanation of what happened. Like, why did this happen? Like, because it's the impact on some people's lives can be quite extreme when you see, high inflation or hyperinflation. I mean, hyperinflation devastates nearly everyone, but in high inflation environments, we've seen the collapse of Lebanon. Turkey has high inflation at the moment. Argentina right now. But if we see that largely across the world, like high inflation events, there's these group of Bitcoiners getting rich. There's going to be some people who want to know what happened and why it happened. And he feels like this needs explaining, and that the role of the toxic maximalist for ensuring that this transition happens as best possible is really important. I'm going around in circles on it, Willie. Some weeks I
it's like I thought you were going to say we need to. I thought you could say there might be a backlash against Bitcoiners.
I think there will be. I think there already is.
I mean, everyone wants to backlash against the rich, right? And blame. But like, I mean, hell, it's like every Bitcoiner I know did their most to try and tell their friends this is like you. Like they hate you on your family hates you on Facebook, right? Your friends and family.
Yeah, they hate me. They're like, shut up about Bitcoin for fuck's sake. I've been telling them since $1,000.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting to see like how that will transition. I mean, it's this last I'd say 3 months. It's just been just seeing how Bitcoin now is really going mainstream. I think there's more and more realization in the last 3 months with, particularly ETF, but not only that. We had the public company side of things, but then we had a country ban it, and then everything got stronger. And then like more and more of the US is opening up to it. We've got regulators thinking about allowing banks to hold it on their balance sheets. And
the FDIC chairman brought that up, didn't he?
Yeah, it's like I don't know if we're going to. I don't know if there's been this argument that you can ban Bitcoin. The governments will ban the Bitcoin. It just doesn't seem that way. You've got, publicly traded ETFs and banks looking to hold it, and MasterCard is like allowing deposits into accounts with it. It's just more and more the financial systems coming into it. It's a different phase now, and I think I don't think the Bitcoin tribe is at a maturity level to like I think I don't know, I can't see that. What is the argument to say that toxicity is going to help this explanation?
No. We did an interview on toxicity, but what he said is he started out by explaining the journey he went on to get. So his starting point was like, if Bitcoin takes over and it becomes the dominant financial asset, there's going to be a lot of people going to get rich off it, and there's going to be a lot of people who might lose out. And this transition in the world, it's not going to be just a simple, peaceful transition. It's peaceful for the Bitcoiners, but there could be collapses to certain parts of the society. We will move to a world where there are people who have social security. There are people who have welfare. There are people who have, in the UK, you get a bus pass. If you're a pensioner, you have, there are all these schemes. As you move to an environment which is more dominated by Bitcoin, there's likely going to see these social programs and maybe less of them. He's saying that is a potential. He said the world's going to look very different. And he said he feels like an explanation will be owed as to why this happened. And in doing so, in doing the research and understanding how Bitcoin grew from nothing to where it is, he realized that the toxic maximus side of things has been really important for Bitcoin to get it where it is. And it's going to be really important for it to continue. So if I didn't explain that right the first time, that's what I meant.
And that it needed a defense system, like the thorns on a little tree, and thorns come out to protect itself until it's a bit bigger.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it was
okay.
it was so fragile to begin with. Like, we didn't realize how fragile. If the government wanted to shut down Bitcoin in 2013, it would have been super easy, right? I mean, some people say you can't, but it would have been a lot easier. You could have regulated it away. It would have been a few nerds that
Would have been
pissed off.
easier, but I don't think it would have been shut down. It would have been a lot easier. You could have attacked it financially, blah blah blah. But yeah.
But the interesting point now, Willie, is I feel like we're getting to this point where Bitcoin, like I said, is it Jason Lowry started talking about Bitcoin is like nuclear. It's like a nuclear defense system.
He's a military guy, right? He's part of the space cadets.
Yeah.
He's kind of genuine. He's our first genuine Bitcoin space cadet, right?
Yeah, and I met him.
Space Force. Yeah.
And,
nice.
But he was saying governments owning Bitcoin is like governments owning nuclear weapons in terms of you've got some, we've got some. It's a defense, right? It's a financial defense. And I find that super interesting because, and the reason I find it super interesting is I look at the US, and the US seems to have like a relatively friendly approach to it on the regulatory side. Now, some people say, no, it doesn't. Look at this, this. But I'm saying it feels like something the US would normally just ban. And it still exists. And it feels like this is actually a really powerful tool for the US. Most of the companies are in the US. A lot of the Bitcoin is held in the US. A lot of the wealth's held in the US. So it's actually good for the US. And I'm wondering, is like China... You saw the rumors of China unbanning Bitcoin. They're having like a public comment on it. I wonder if they realized...
Was that actually... I thought that was fake news. I think someone was citing source themselves.
Oh, was it?
Is that like some... yeah, I think... is it for real or not?
I thought it was for real.
Okay.
But either way...
I don't believe it until I see it, but that's totally against what China's policies are.
Yeah, it's actually in the Independent. Interesting. I mean, look, whether it is or it isn't, but I feel like the China banning Bitcoin mining seems to be a huge mistake. I mean, even
geopolitically, it's crazy.
Well, even if they didn't, I mean, just financially, even if they didn't want to have people own or use the currency in China, you can still outsource the service to the rest of the world as just supply the energy to operate the miners, because the revenue will still make its way back into China.
Yeah, it's also a vote on the network, I think, as well.
Yeah.
If you have a majority say, and also your totalitarian government, you could actually, it's your best shot to shut down the network, because you can 51% attack it, because you just tell all the miners, no, we're taking control of that network, and instantly by decree you can double spend on that network. You can't do it anywhere else, right? But now that's taken off the table. But yeah, like I heard this thing, I read it, like someone was musing on Bitcoin, US, China, and you got one side, you've got a very centralized government that's controlling everything. And so if you're going to compete with that government, you've got to do the opposite, right? Like you wouldn't compete with iOS and the iPhone with by doing an imitation. You have to do the Android thing, which is open it up. So then you have Mac and Windows, So you have these, like, and Bitcoin is a better match for the US. It's a democratic country mainly, and like it's decentralized with its state-run system, and like it does kind of make sense, even though we're in a US dollar reserve world, and it kind of is. It's kind of like going into competition with your main profit center, but like in the long term, it's I think it's a really good play, right? And I don't think governments are thinking like this. I don't think they're thinking about it much at all. But I think it's just a consequence of how the US is structured, where you've got a lot of moving parts that are independent, and they've got different charters and these checks and balances, and so the whole thing meshes together, and they each do whatever their directive is, and right down to individual states wanting to open it up and others not. And so I don't think there's any kind of coherent. I don't think there's a coherent policy. I don't think there's any kind of coherent conspiracy. I think a lot of people are very conspiracist, particularly in our space. I think it's just a whole bunch of people just going through the machinery of it all. And like, this touches on, we're talking about how governments work, and I recall. Do you remember the Antonopoulos 2014 testimony to the Canadian Senate?
I think so. It's been a while since I've seen that.
It was like a YouTube, 2 hours long, and it was very articulate. And Antonopoulos gave a very good case of what this technology was and what benefit it was to society, and how over-regulating or even regulating it at that early stage would destroy its potential. And not long after that testimony, Canada went ahead and decided not to overregulate it, and they allowed it to flourish. And we've got a spot ETF in Canada. We've got all these things happening in Canada that's not happening in the US because of one person. And actually, I know the story behind it. It was another person within the government that was a Bitcoiner that got the budget to get Antonopoulos and to do a whole 1 year study around Bitcoin. That person ended up going to CoinDesk afterwards, but like there was a chain of things that happened that made major change at the governmental level, and I did not see any Bitcoin toxicity defending Bitcoin in that. Like it was just very smart people working within the system and being very respectful. And one of the things that struck me about that testimony was how much respect and honor that was showered upon Antonopoulos. And they were very, very appreciative. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of good energy in this room. And that was like a model to me of how change is made. And I see this is what Michael Saylor says as well, like the sort of cheery, likable attitude. So you don't create enemies. And so I'm not bought into toxicity as being a defense to this network. And maybe a defense against shitcoiners. Like maybe it's like scammers, yes, but not at these state level change making. I think the toxicity is, it's hurting the credibility of Bitcoin.
No, I agree with you on that, though. I don't think at the state level where where the regulators are, or
even the hedge fund world, that sort of thing, and the bankers,
I don't. Well, I've got a mix view there. So I think at the regulator level, I don't think there's any benefit in being completely hostile and telling them to go fuck themselves. We're going to do this anyway, because they're the people that can create the rules and make life a bit harder. Yes, Bitcoin might win anyway. At the hedge fund level, if the hedge fund guys are interested in Bitcoin, super interesting. But these vulture hedge funds that seem to be getting involved in things like, I think WorldCoin is an atrocious.
Oh, the venture capitalists,
yeah. So the VCs who get involved in like shit like that, I think absolutely be toxic with those guys. I think they're vultures, and I think they get rich off making money off other people's misery. I think
Yeah.
I think at the protocol level, you can talk about it. Perhaps thinking back to 2017 when there was an attempt to co-opt Bitcoin Core to increase the block size, yada yada. And actually, I think that version of the code failed. Luckily, it didn't happen, but I think there was a bug in the Jeff Garzik version that failed, and that really was an attempt to change Bitcoin and co-opt it away from the devs, which I think some of the toxic behavior around that set in place what should be expected.
Yeah.
And I remember also John Carvalho being, whether you say toxic or firm, doesn't matter. I mean, I think some people confuse toxic with being like abusive. I think we can all agree abusive isn't wrong. And then I think on the scams, I think the toxicity is with about protecting people, but there's no like neat even line because it's like, well, what is a scam? And so the definitions about these lines get kind of messy. But in the end, as somebody who's moaned and whinged about people on Twitter, actually, I was watching the Chappelle special recently, and he said something along the lines of, weren't you upset about what people said on Twitter? He was like, I didn't give a shit because Twitter isn't real life. I was like, yeah, fair point.
Yeah, but I have yet to meet someone where it didn't make some kind of impact. I think most people get triggered on it. If you don't get triggered on it, then I'd believe you. But I think most people at some level get triggered.
I do. I definitely
I mean,
do.
like anyone with a large following will get immense amount of trolling, and like maybe 1% of it hits you right in that spot where you're triggered.
On the wrong day with the wrong words.
On the wrong day or whatever. So everyone has a trigger. Eventually, it gets in. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so it's going to be very obvious who that person I spoke to was shortly. I'm just going to say it anyway. It's fuck it. It's Pete Rizzo.
Oh, Pete Rizzo. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I like him. He's just like he says what it is. He's I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, I like him. He's quite challenging. He's a challenging interview because he really challenges your questions or your assumptions. But he's got all these theories. But I trust him on it because he's gone there and done the work. He's done all this research on the history of Bitcoin. The prehistory.
He's a journalist. He's like a real journalist,
a proper journalist. And then he's done the actual creation of Bitcoin, and now he's done the fork wars. So I think he's come to this. He's in doing that work and doing that research. He himself has become more of a Bitcoin maximalist. Because he's like, okay, I understand what we have here in our hands. I understand what we've created. I understand what we've been through. And I understand what we might go through in the future. So this kind of maximalism is really super important. So it's a fascinating interview. It's one worth listening to.
Right. Okay. I'll do that. I think is he writing a book? Sounds like it is.
I mean, my assumption is a book is coming. He hasn't said so, but my assumption is a book is going to come at some point. And I think it would be a fantastic book.
He'll be the nominated Bitcoin historian.
Yeah, I think he's doing it actually. Yeah, I think Aaron Van Weerdem's done some of it, and I think Nick Carter as well. But I think he's taken that place now.
I'm like really waiting for the big budget Hollywood movie on not the Social Network but the Bitcoin Network. With all of the drama, because there's much more drama in the Bitcoin story than like the Facebook story or the Steve Jobs story, or you see some of these big screen depictions of the story, and we've got massive, crazy stories that happen in Bitcoin from, Silk Road days, right through to the fork wars. WikiLeaks, the whole Satoshi mystery. It's so. I mean, I think that's one of the key points when we see that movie. That'll be, I think, the middle of the mainstream adoption. Like we're in that. I think, are we at? I forget the number. I think I said it last time. We're at 20% of the US, like having Bitcoin. Is it something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what is it? Is it 12.5% is what's on the normal curve? The first. You got the early pioneers, early adopters, and then the early mainstream, which we've crossed, right? We're comfortably crossed by probably, over a year now. And so
crossed the chasm.
We've crossed the chasm, and we're ready to go into half the population very quickly in the Western developed world. And so I'm waiting for this movie. that'll be fascinating, and it'll garner a lot of audience.
Well, I wonder if because the sequel to The Social Network is Bitcoin Billionaires, right? So there's certainly a movie about the Winklevoss. I think that might have been greenlit.
Oh, really? Who's the producer director?
Don't know.
I mean, look, that's a brilliant book. I love it.
Well, The Social Network was brilliant because Fincher directed it. You know, you had a proper director at the helm. That film shouldn't have been a brilliant film. It's the story of Facebook. It should have been cheesy and crap. But because Fincher did it was brilliant.
He created the emotional character tension. No, that's great. You know, I really like the Bitcoin Billionaires. It really reframed the Winklevoss twins as the heroes and Zuck's as the villain, which is an exact flip of The Social Network. I really enjoyed that.
Here we go. Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss are co-financing a film based on Ben Mesrich's Bitcoin Billionaires, the follow-up to The Social Network. They will return to the silver screen in a film adaptation of Bitcoin Billionaires. According to a report for Deadline, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss will co-finance a film which picks up with the story where the accidental billionaires left off, with them receiving $65 million settlement from Facebook, which they went on to invest in Bitcoin during the early years of the cryptocurrency boom. So I guess it's going to include them going out to Ibiza, and is that where they met Charlie Shrem? They met some guy at a bar in Ibiza.
Shrem. Yeah, Shrem, and he took them down to his man cave full of computers, and
I wonder who's
got them into it. I'm trying to find because the irony, if the Winklevoss exceeds Zuck's net worth, that would be highly ironic.
I would love that to happen.
I'm just trying to find the price at which that happens. Where is he on the rich list?
He's
just going down the rich list.
He's 116 billion.
116 billion. 116 billion. Okay. What's like 116?
And they've got like 8.6. I think you've got to consider them one entity.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. So they own 1% of the supply, right? Roughly 2.1 million Bitcoins, right?
I don't know if it's that. I think they bought 1% of the supply at the time they got involved. I don't know if they kept stacking.
Oh, right. I thought they got like 1%. Oh, well, how many coins were minted at that point?
I mean, I think it was about 120,000.
Is it? No. You mean no? You mean Saylor's got more through all of his holdings?
Potentially. I mean, I don't know. It's not the kind of question I asked them.
If it's 2.1, I think it's it was so early in the network. They want 1 point. I thought they were going for the whole 2.1 million. If that is the case, then they're worth it's basically $55,000 per Bitcoin. Ironically, Zuck's net worth divided by. Oh no, sorry, that's no, that's wrong. I was out by a zero. So yeah, 210,000 Bitcoin. That's about right. Okay, so that was.
It says here they have
basically $500,000 per coin, and they exceed Zuck's wealth.
I don't think they've got that. I think they've got. It says they've got about 70,000 here.
That seems low. No,
but I think,
really?
like I say,
Sailor's got more.
I didn't think they carried on. I don't know if they carried on stacking, and also I don't know how much they use then to invest in their businesses. Either way, whatever. I'd fucking love them to crush Zuck.
No, they've never released their coins from cold storage. It's covered in the book. It's just scattered through safety deposit boxes all around the world, and I know that they haven't because there's too much OPSEC to even go into one of those.
They could never do it again.
They can never. It's just frozen, locked up forever. They could probably trade paper around it or something.
It would be so funny if they ended up crushing Zuckerberg.
Oh no, it'd be awesome. It would be total karma.
I was I saw them the other night actually.
Did you?
Know why I'm bringing that up. Yeah.
Man, you're like mingling with the rich and famous over there, eh?
Yeah, I'm dripping with pour when I was hanging around with them. No, I had to catch up with them. Had to catch up with them on a couple of things. But they're the thing about them is they're actually really super nice guys.
Right. Yeah.
Whenever
Yeah, it sounds like that.
I don't waste their time, or whenever I need anything, they always get back to me. And so I think I said that when I first interviewed. I was like, do you know the price where you crush Zuck?
And what they say?
No, they're humble about it. They're really nice guys.
It's like $1 million Bitcoin. It does look like it's 120,000 coins. I looked it up too. So
yeah,
I imagine they have more because they earned some through Gemini and blah blah. But yeah. So yeah, good on them.
All right, man. Well, listen, we are coming to an end, dude. Let's give me a price target for the end of the year. The one thing you don't want to answer. Where are we looking now?
I don't do price targets, man.
I know. But you have an upper bound.
It's so weird. It's so weird to be asked to. It's like everyone wants a price target.
Of course they do.
Okay, at the end of the year, I'll tell you what it's going to be below. It's not going to go above 200,000 at the end of the year.
Okay, so I'll win my bet.
It's not going to go above 200,000.
Yeah.
And it's going to be above now. There's my target. It's going to be 60 to 200,000. Well, January, it theoretically go a little bit above 200,000 if everything goes crazy. But there you go. You've got a good 3 to 3.5x range there. It's really hard, because this, what it's like. It's like it sits there like a timer about to go off, then it explodes, and then you can, once it explodes, it makes a run. But like, when does it pop? It's kind of random. So there's no, I don't know. There's no data that predicts that, right? It just can frame the probabilities. So. There you go. No, you just want clickbait.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's. What?
That's like, say something that makes me money, bro.
Hey, listen, dude. Every time I have a chance for clickbait, I don't do the clickbait title.
Do you? Oh, good on you.
Yeah, I might do. Okay. My last one's I got told off for the last one because it wasn't exactly what the show was.
Oh, what was that for my show?
Yeah, what did we do? We ended up just talking shit for the whole show, and then I think at the end I was like,
liked it. I was like, what the fuck? And I was genuine every time. The last 2 episodes, I was like, don't listen to this. It was just, I don't know, like you rabbiting on about shit that you want to talk about. Yeah. And I said, don't listen to it. And people thought I was genuine. I was like, don't listen to this. This is like not on chain or anything like that. So
people loved it. Honestly, I got so much good feedback. I think because they can listen, they can read your newsletter and listen to you anyway. But I think people really like your thoughts and things. So I think it was Through the Keyhole with Willy Woo, into the life of Willy Woo.
There you go.
There you go. When am I going to see you again, man? When are you going to be about and about?
I think I'm going to blow this joint early next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have left now and make Tones Summit in Dubai. It seems like a lot of fun. But baby's a little bit too small. I think we'll be ready in the start of next year to get a little bit mobile. I so look forward to that. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, listen. Love to see you, man. Love to see you in person. Hopefully have a beer at some point. And thank you.
Totally.
I'm going to come up with some totes offs. I'm going to come up with some really clickbaity title now. Now you said that. I don't know.
Okay, Bitcoin to infinity. There's your price target.
Yeah, there you go. Bitcoin to infinity. Brilliant. I tell you what, if I do that, I tell you what, did you know my biggest ever show? I think my biggest ever show is a Woody show. Let me just check. Hold on.
What was the title? It was like a price target, I'm sure.
Hold on.
Some sort of
probably. No. My third and fourth are both Woody shows. So the top show's President Bukele. Second one's Weinstein. But 3 and 4 are Willy Woo and Willy Woo. So we've got is the bull market over, and how to trade the end of a bull market.
Yeah, everyone's looking after their money. I think that's the thing.
Okay. Let's go with Bitcoin to infinity.
Yeah. Or you just go big bear market ahead. Watch out.
All right, man. Well, listen, I will see you in a month. Thanks for this. Always love talking to you.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right. Catch you later.